1200. Call. $2,400. Call. Sorry. All in.
I was looking really good on the flop. I was looking really good on the turn, but not good enough.
Fold. All right, let's see him. King, queen, 10, 9. Ace 10. Okay. Yeah, so very reasonable first in raise, very reasonable call. Also could 3-bet. Both options are viable. Ace 10, it is a close hand. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there were 2 people in the pot and I'm out of position, I felt like I needed to fold.
Yeah, so you could 3-bet. I would say it's a minority play compared to folding, which I think is preferred. I don't like calling, so yeah, I would mix it up there. If you had played long enough with these players to see that perhaps they're playing wider ranges, then 3-betting makes a lot of sense. But I think folding is a good default option. As far as the flop goes, so playing out of position on flops against a player that has called you in position is one of the trickier parts of no-limit tournaments. In general, I would say that the bet you made on the flop it's understandable in the sense that you connected with the board, but you didn't connect in such a way that you want to, build the pot over the course of multiple streets. So I think a useful thing to think about when you see this flop is ask yourself, how is this board looking for my range? How does it look for my opponent's range? And then ask yourself, how does my hand connect with it? So I think this is one of the boards where there's going to be relatively equal equity distribution between both players. So you're going to connect reasonably well with certain hands, as is she, and there's not going to be a huge advantage for one player over another. And what that's often going to recommend in terms of strategic implementation is you're going to do some betting, generally favor smaller bet sizes because the board is not great for you relative to your opponent. And you're also
down bet to 400 or something like that?
Yeah, something like that, 400, 500, like around a third of the pot. And also do a decent amount of checking so that when you check, your opponent knows that you don't have a weak hand. So in general, with that kind of hand, you have a 9. It doesn't need that much protection. Of the hands that you want protection from, hands like this, we can see in this exact case, she's not going to fold to a bet. She has 2 overs and a backdoor flush draw. And then a gut shot. And your 10 actually is a disadvantageous card because it'll give her a straight. So it's useful to think about these things as well, like how do my outs affect the texture of the board? Is it likely to give my opponent a better hand? So I think you had an understandable thought process of flopping middle pair, but you don't have a great kicker, and I think you bloated the pot a little bit too much right off the bat. Even if the turn was, let's say, like the 5, you kind of put yourself in this situation where now, you've bloated the pot, the stack to pot ratio is somewhere between 2.5 and 3. It's not super clear of how you want to proceed with your pair, right? It's still second pair on the board. Your opponent could have a draw. They could still have a jack. They could be slow playing. The river can change a lot of things. So in general, I'd recommend taking it slower on the flop in a lot of cases, particularly out of position. And if you bet, try to have some foresight of what possible turns there are and what kind of plans you might have on turns. So as it were, you got this queen, and now you started to bluff, essentially. Maybe that's unfair characterization of what was... I should ask you, actually. What was... Yeah, semi-bluff. Is that fair in terms of what you were thinking on the turn when you bet the 2,400?
Yeah, I like the turn.
Yeah, and that's understandable. It gives you added equity, but it also complicates the board in such a way that it can improve your opponent further. Something else to consider is that when you're betting with this hand, the best outcome is that she just folds right away, right? Having the 9 in your hand is, one downside because a 9 is a hand that you could perceivably target as a bluff. So if she had a hand like ace-9 suited, probably she would fold to the turn bet. But when you hold the 9 yourself, it's less likely that she has those cards in her hand.